will call back to order the meeting of the Austin City Council, and it brings us to item number 33. Item number 33, it was pulled for speakers, and so we'll go to those speakers now. The first being Scott Johnson. Scott Johnson. Next speaker is Phil Burns. Phil Burns.
Council, my name is Phil Burns. I'm a fifth-generation Austinite and a parks activist. I'd like to thank you for the aquatics oversight and the restoring of the funds to the aquatics department first, and then I'd like to talk about this project, which was deemed an emergency by Parks Director Sarah Hensley because of sod problems. Yet she failed to mention that there was a $1 million grant from Texas Parks Department made in September 2011 that was about to run. This was the real emergency. The sod problem is a lack of maintenance. The loss of $1 million grant is a managerial oversight that is inexcusable. You've been placed in a bad position by Bard's failure to address Auditorium Shores in a timely manner. If the construction isn't completed within the time frame, the grant awarded to the city is lost. Who wants to lose $1 million grant, but also who wants a poor plan? C3 has indicated that it's willing to give more money, so why not use this money to offset the problem? This is the solution, is to use the extra money that C3 is willing to give to fix this problem. While PART has come up with a solution that allows the dogs to use the water, it fails in the need to separate the dogs from the trail. The plan has no dedicated parking for dog area, making dogs pass over areas you don't want them in. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't separate the dogs from the trail when they come in. As a matter of fact, it requires the dogs, all dogs that are going to use the park, to use the trail. And that's the problem, is that it makes the trail controversy worse. So the plan plainly doesn't solve the problem. It costs $1.1 million for the dog area. There were great ideas brought up during by the general public during this process. Some, like limiting dog access during certain hours of peak activity, made sense and would not have cost money. Allowing the use of the park by all, because of the process that PART has chosen to make, taking the public out of the decision-making process, taking the neighborhood association out of the decision-making process, great ideas have been ignored. I'm a park activist. I pay attention, yet had a hard time finding out about the meetings. I looked for comments and suggestions section of the plan on the city site, but couldn't find it. But most importantly, was appalled by the attitude of PART staff. It is clear that there needs to be a change of culture and that PART staff are not just deceitful, but worse. PART's culture needs to change. Right now, you are about to vote on an idea, not a plan that's on paper, but a bunch of promises. The size of the dog area has changed and there will be no mulch and the floodplain to wash in the river. But what other changes are going to occur with these nebulous plans? Will the promises be up to your expectations or the public's expectations? If the process so far is an indicator, I don't think so. I believe you should delay the vote until the actual design is on paper. 2,500 petition members can't be wrong.
Thank you. So you're saying the trail is going to the dogs, is that right?
Yes, sir, it is going to the dogs.
All right. Daniel Woodruff. Daniel Woodruff. Colin Wallace. Colin Wallace. Eric Korchesny. What is your name?
My name is Colin Wallace.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for your time today. My name is Colin Wallace. I'm the Executive Director of the Austin Parks Foundation. On behalf of our board and staff, I want to issue our support for the plan. We have been improving parks in Austin for 23 years. We've been involved in this process, not since the beginning, but for quite a long time. And frankly, PARD has done a great job of taking feedback from a lot of different groups. And as you all know, plans like these that affect so many people are complicated. Everybody has to compromise. And I think the plan that's before you shows compromise from a lot of groups. But from our perspective, we are here because it improves a park that is a disaster right now. It is desperately in need of improvement. And more importantly than that, it solves a problem of safety, which is very real out there. The collision of dogs and cyclists and runners is something that happens on a daily basis, and something needs to be done about it. And this plan, while not perfect, meets the needs of everybody in a really great way. So we're very much in support of it. So thank you for your time. I know you have a lot of speakers, so I'll be brief, but just wanted to make sure we gave our support for the plan. Thanks.
Thank you. Eric Korchesny. All right. Susan Rankin.
Hello, Mayor, council members. I'm Susan Rankin. I'm Executive Director of the Trail Foundation. As you know, the Auditorium Shores area along the trail supports multiple recreation, transportation, and cultural users. But as Colin just said, it's showing clear signs of wear and tear. The increased usage in that area has also resulted in some conflicts between runners, walkers, bikers, people with dogs on leash, people with dogs off leash. We've studied the latest designs very carefully and believe that the renovation would create a safer and more sustainable public space. This important metropolitan park is in fact an integral part of the Butler Trail at Lady Bird Lake. There are thousands of trail users using that space every day of the year. In fact, the vast majority of users in this area are trail users. And again, it's a metropolitan space. It's a citywide park that people come to from all over town. Since we do represent the thousands of daily trail users, we did give some ground in getting to this compromise plan. We compromised to allow the current lakefront route to be shifted slightly away from the lake for a certain distance, a feature that is in fact key for the huge number of trail users. We feel that this compromise will in fact work, as it does not create opportunities for conflicts between users. I don't know how many of you guys know about this, but we have all heard of many incidents and in fact injuries in that area of the trail, and the users in the city are in fact fortunate that there hasn't been even something worse that has happened. And I think that you have gotten some emails and letters that have detailed some of those firsthand. We also support the compromise plan because it addresses the needed improvements to the riparian areas. The staff can go into more detail about all of that. The Trail Foundation expresses no opinion, however, about the appropriate or the right geographic size for this or any great off-leash area. That's in fact something that really should be determined by the Parks Department in collaboration with the off-leash community. The compromise plan that was passed 5-1 by the Parks Board is something that we support, and it does include and reflect input from multiple stakeholder groups, including the Trail Foundation and the Parks Foundation. Again, we support this plan because it will allow Austinites to safely use this popular park for years to come. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Cindy Colleen. Cindy Colleen. All right. Teresa Q. Teresa Q. Quay? Quay, okay. So you donated time to Cindy, but you can speak on your own if you'd like.
I'll speak on my own.
Okay.
My name is Teresa Quay, and I've lived in Austin
Why don't you pull
since
that mic down a little
1960.
bit?
Bring this down. I'm sorry, my public speaking is...
You're doing great.
I've been a realtor since 1984. I am against the proposed Auditorium Shores plan, and I ask why such a rush. A gentleman earlier this morning spoke about striving for transparency in his issue. Another speaker stressed that the neighbors had been consulted and worked with as to the alley vacation in the Rainy Street neighborhood. What happened with the community involvement in this? I think I'm plugged in, and I didn't hear anything about it. There has been no concern for public opinion, no vetting. On the contrary, there's been a backroom treatment of this issue, which I fear is setting a terrible trend. The lack of hard research as to the number of dogs downtown, how much room they need, dogs without access to any play area besides Auditorium Shores. Downtown dwellers have spent and continue to spend huge money to live downtown. Where is the information and where are the incident reports of all these terrible things that have happened downtown, all these terrible injuries that have happened that Ms. Rankin just mentioned? I keep hearing about the silent majority, and I thought it was a joke at first. If they're silent, how does anybody know what they're saying? Who are they? Postpone this vote, please, for further study and find the answer to some of these questions, or do you not want to know what the answers really are? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Suzanne Stover.
Hi there, my name's Suzanne Stover, and I live downtown. I'm an avid user of this park, frequently down there every day, usually once or twice with my 2 dogs. Because I have this perspective, I don't share the sentiment that PARD is telling you about all of the incidents, the dangers, and the disastrous state of this park. Yes, there are conflicts on the trail, but it usually only happens at heavy use peak times. I was down there this morning, and I was the only person down there at about 9 o'clock with my 2 dogs. This park is vital to my quality of life, and I'm opposed to the plan to put fences in this park with my dogs. Putting fences up where people have to walk through tiny gates, given the amount of dogs that use this park, is only going to increase the conflict and the congestion in the park. I'm also opposed to the event lawn, as they're calling it, being called an event lawn, and also banning dogs altogether. Thank you.
Councilor Martinez.
I just want to provide a little additional information. There will be a barrier so that dogs can't just run over to the trail, but there's no gates. You know, the fencing is just to act as a barrier. There'll be wide openings that don't have any gates on them at all. And I don't know where it's just not going to be fenced off an enclosed area. It's just going to have barriers. I don't know why you're shaking your head. I'm telling you what's in the proposal. And I'm saying that there are going to be fence barriers, but it's not going to be gated off and closed, as you mentioned. You said narrow gates to have to go in and out of. That's not going to exist.
Next speaker is Cam Magor. Cam, M-A-G-O-R. Stephanie Smith. You can hand it to Councilmember Riley.
Thank you so much.
Or the clerk.
Mayor, Council, I am so grateful to be able to speak in front of you. My name is Stephanie Smith. I am a multi-use park user. My background is 30 years of experience as an executive coach specializing in highly effective strategic visioning and planning. My business is national. My clients here in Austin include Whole Foods, Texas Trial Lawyers Association, the Texas Bankers Association, Texas Special Olympics, to name a few. I like facts, data, and demographics. I have witnessed time after time how hidden agendas, suppression of information, and ignoring the facts will ultimately lead to failure. Every time. That dynamic is deeply entwined in this proposal for Auditorium Shores. I urge you to review the packets just delivered to you. This is a page-by-page, point-by-point breakdown of PARD's proposal, facts versus inaccurate, misleading, or false information. This research that you have in front of you is the distillation of weeks of research, conversations with PARD departments in 13 different cities in our nation, national animal associations, including the legal department of the National ASPC. Across the board, they were adamant that trying to fit 200 to 250 dogs into too small of an acreage was indicative of extremely poor planning. If we can do this research, why hasn't PARD? We are Austinites. We are daily park users. Yes, we're concerned about renovations at Auditorium Shores. It needs it. We know the issues. We're there every day to witness them. We have seen conflicts. We've actually had input from cyclists and runners that they have more problems on the leash trails, tangling up, running, and getting snaggled in dogs' leashes than they actually feel relieved by the time that they get to the leash-free area because they can circumnavigate the dogs easier. We love this beloved, iconic park named Auditorium Shores. We care about our parks, we support our park organizations. We have invested significant volunteer hours to support our parks in times of need. Yes, it needs help. Erosion control, trail repair, ground revitalization, fresh turf for dust control. These are crucial issues. But just because there are crucial issues pending doesn't mean we should jump the gun and greenlight the portion of this proposal that indeed has no appropriate or applicable research, no public surveys for impact viability. We implore you, delay or reject this proposal. Thank you very much.
Piper Becker. In following Piper is Marion L., and you might want to re-sign up because you do need to have a last name. No, wait till I call you. Go ahead.
I also have I don't know if I have the time. If somebody else wants to donate her time to me, I don't know if I could do that now or if I have to come back.
If she signed up, she can.
She signed up and she said that I could.
Where is she? What's her name? Say her name. Will you say her name on the microphone for me?
Pat.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Bastatus?
Of course.
Oh.
Yes, so you have 6 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, sir. So I would like to come and talk on two items. One, I want to come and talk for myself as Piper Becker. I'm a runner and an avid park user. First off, I'd like to start by saying that the safety is important to me and understanding what the safety factors are and how they play a role. The park department is misrepresenting the safety contributors and does not give an accurate assessment of the safety issues. I have 3,000 data points. I've been running at Lady Bird Lake 3 or more times a week for over 20 years. I run past where the dogs play by the water as my regular route. I've had one collision. That equates to 0.03%. I have had 7 times more incidents with cyclists and leashes on the trail in various bottleneck locations. The reason why they continue to just say it's the dogs are a problem, that's PARD, without providing hard facts, where, why, what percentages, is because the data is too small. The reality is the dogs tend to move out of your way unless they're converging in one spot. It does not require fencing and leashing for safety. However, leashed dogs should be allowed everywhere in the park. There should be no bans. Please get real safety statistics before jumping to conclusions that this proposal solves the real safety issues. Second, I'd like to point out that the Parks Board meeting, there was no one in favor of the proposal that did not have a self-serving interest to benefit or was not affiliated with the project. No one. Everyone against the proposal was from the community. They keep saying that they have worked with the community, but that they've worked with stakeholders for years, but the reality is the majority of the stakeholders were not community residents, not downtown dwellers, not real park users, nor were they surrounding neighborhoods. Third, it's essential that we maintain this beloved park for public use, not private for-profit purposes, segregating and fencing the spaces under the pretense of improvements, but the real purpose is for events, period. Not long ago, we had an advocate for the parkland. We even named the lake in her honor. To quote her, "The environment is where we all meet. We all have a mutual interest. It is the one thing all of us share. It is not only a mirror of ourselves, but a focusing lens on which we can become. Who among you will be our advocates for this park?" Lucy Baines Johnson said, "There is no legacy my mother would have treasured more than to have helped people recognize the value in preserving and promoting our native land." I know decisions have been made, hands have been shaken, contracts have been signed, but sometimes the right thing to do is the hardest thing to do. It entails stopping the path we're on, eliminate restrictions and fencing, reevaluate what is important for our future, our environment, and preservation of this park as for a park for all to use, people, dogs, families alike. Postpone the vote. We don't have enough research and public input. Do not segregate and sell it to the highest bidder. Keep it a treasure. Make it a beautiful park that Lady Bird would be proud of. I also am speaking for Cindy Collin, who is our BCNA president, and I'd like to say a few words. Good afternoon. I'm speaking
You have
on
a little
Bolden-
over 2 minutes.
Huh?
Is
gets
she
over-
donating
can she-
time
can-
to you?
Can she have my time? Yeah. Good, there. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Your time has ended, and your name is what?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Cindy Collin. I live in the Bolden Creek neighborhood and was the previous president of that neighborhood association. We are all very appreciative of the C3 donation to restore our precious parkland at Auditorium Shores. We would love to see this park, which lies within our neighborhood plan, become the crown jewel of Town Lake Metropolitan Park. BCNA does like portions, a lot of us like portions of the proposed design. We like that the shoreline water access for dogs has been moved to the west, and we like the additional trails. We feel these two features will significantly reduce congestion and improve safety for all park users. However, the design does not address the significant shoreline erosion at the limestone steps. Bolden residents' biggest concern is that the public parkland at Auditorium Shores will inevitably feature more private events very soon. The contract between C3 PART and APF refers to the park as a major event venue. The tour partner's event impact analysis also states that the overall design of Town Lake Metropolitan Park must also reflect its status as an event center and include design considerations that allow events to operate safely and efficiently. So when you look at the design and the fenced-in dog park, we are wondering, or I'm wondering, whether the fences are there to segregate dogs and to reflect the long-term vision of the park becoming an event center. And since the Friends of Austin Dog Parks doesn't support the fenced-in area, it does seem that the fences are part of the public parkland becoming an event center. We oppose any, Bolden residents oppose any feature of the design that incorporates the long-term vision of it becoming an event center before a robust community process studying the impacts of events is conducted, documented, and presented to council. We are aware Tour Partners is contracted to do this, but to date, their public outreach and feedback gathering is lackluster at best. C3's donation in 2009 to renovate the turf at Zilker was a great success. The park is beautiful and has a balanced use. Neighbors did not object when C3 asked to add event days at Zilker. But Auditorium Shores is different. While we desperately want new turf, Bolden residents will object to adding event days. We want to ensure the design considers Auditorium Shores a majestic public parkland first and foremost, and an events second. Thank you.
Okay. Marilyn L. Did you, is that a mistake on your last name, or is your last name L? Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That side's fine. You have 3 minutes. Would you put her name in there as Marilyn L. King?
Thank you. Yes, my name is Marion King. I am not totally against this project. I am in favor of the environmental and event venue improvements. But I'm speaking today for some stakeholders who can't talk and some who may not know what's coming toward them yet. You're familiar with the plat of the property. The seating area where the dogs play, I call it the dog parks, the dog fields down to the water. That's what they want to use as sort of an amphitheater space. And then down at the far end is the 5.7 acres of marginally usable space that they want to put the dog park restricted. And it's the area in the middle that I think is my biggest disturbance. Currently, the dogs will lose 2/3 of their play space. The configuration of that hike and bike trail determines how much freedom will be taken away from the dogs. Wherever that trail is will end their freedom and begin the on-leash because they don't want the dogs running across the trail. So I think more can be done to reduce that loss. I believe the trail users are willing to have a different reroute if it means allowing the dogs continued enjoyment of their freedom. Wherever the trail is placed, the dog's freedom necessarily ends there. This is a question I have for you. Can the configuration of the middle area, vis-a-vis the hike and bike trail versus the dog's freedom, be adjusted after the adoption of this program, of this proposal? Is that set in stone beyond the Stevie Ray statue? Can we do other things that we might determine later is a better idea?
Nothing's ever set in stone, ma'am.
Well, I'm wondering about, because I've understood that the city is fronting the $3.5 million, and then C3 Partners basically have us on the leash to do what they want so that they'll pay us back the $300,000 a year.
So to speak. You're on a leash, so to speak.
All right, well, that's my one question. And I have a second question with a few comments ahead. Austin is an inclusive place. We say everybody gets to play. We try hard to accommodate everyone's pursuit of happiness. People have different interests and points of view. And so this is my question. Please, pretty please, table this vote until February. Put out clearer maps of the current iteration of the trail relocation and open up for public input of cautions and suggested adjustments. And I will volunteer my time to help you edit and read. I'm available to you 30 hours a week.
We appreciate that.
Okay.
Edward Gamar.
Thank you.
Edward Gemar. All right. Charles Betts. Charles Betts. Larry Graham. Are you one of those names I just called, sir? Oh, you're just the cameraman. Sorry. Melissa Berry. Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. My name's Melissa Berry. I'm the Arts and Parks Director with the Downtown Austin Alliance. And I'm here to voice the Downtown Austin Alliance's support for this plan today. As a metropolitan park, Auditorium Shores serves our entire metro area. And there are many different types of uses and needs for our community. There are people who need safe access to this unique waterfront green space that Austin is so fortunate to have in its front yard. It's not easy trying to accommodate all these needs and uses. It involves compromise, and that's what we're seeing here today. In addition to the more than 1 million trail users, there's a growing number of city residents who need access to green space. We have a growing number of families with dogs. That's true. And these people need places to take their dogs to run. We also need places for families to take their children to run. Families need places for their kids to play. We need places to exercise, people watch, have picnic lunches, relax, and read a book. The plan supports all of these needs, and so the Downtown Austin Alliance supports this plan because it helps to create a safe, welcoming, and usable park for all of these different types of people. And lastly, Auditorium Shores, as everyone knows, is in bad condition and needs improvement. Thank you.
Keith Linton. All right. David King. And whoever's speaking that Keith Linton is donating to, when I call you up, remind me of that.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is David King, and I live in the Zilker neighborhood. The proposed improvement plan for Auditorium Shores is a good start, but it needs some significant changes to achieve a better balance of public uses. Open green spaces, which are becoming scarce in the urban core, need to be preserved. This is all we have. There's no more. And what we do with Auditorium Shores will be there forever. So we have to think hard and seriously about what we're doing. And this is the first step in that direction. And what we do in this first step sets the pattern going forward. Other uses need to be considered. Right now we have uses that are related to movement, bicycling, dogs running, jogging, walking. We don't have anything related to static uses, such as picnicking or daydreaming or reading a book or painting or just sitting on a bench. There aren't any benches there. Where are the benches? What about those uses? Sufficient space is needed for dogs to run and play without creating safety issues for other users, but they need their space too. More bathrooms and recycling containers need to be provided. Existing trees need to be protected and more need to be planted to provide shaded areas so people will hang around there. The shoreline adjacent to the current dog waiting area needs to be protected from erosion. Impervious cover should not be increased. As far as I can tell, it's not, except for a few more trails that are being proposed, which concerns me. That's more impervious cover. But it should be reduced wherever possible. This feeds, the water runs right into Lady Bird Lake here. Pollution and keeping the runoff to a minimum should be a priority. More native grasses need to be planted to protect against erosion and to reduce the runoff and pollution. The mouth of Bowling Creek needs to be cleaned up and protected against erosion. A sustainable, ongoing maintenance plan needs to be implemented to preserve the improvements in open green space. That should be a part of this. Park rules regarding parking, off-leash, and on-leash and trash need to be enforced consistently. The $3.5 million in improvements should not be a wasted effort given the impending long-term project for Auditorium Shores. It'd be a shame to spend $3.5 million and then come dig everything up that we've just done for the long-term plan to make it into an event center. The $3.5 million in improvements should not set the stage to install infrastructure to support more and larger events at Auditorium Shores. Please preserve the remaining open green space in Auditorium Shores and do not allow it to become a full-time event center. Thank you.
Thank you. Caitlin Whittington. And you have 3 minutes.
Mayor Leffingwell, members of council, my name is Caitlin Whittington, and I'm here today as a concerned citizen and also in my capacity as a planner with South by Southwest conferences and festivals. I'm also a native Austinite who has been enjoying events and leisure time at Auditorium Shores since my childhood. I'm a friend of Austin Parks, and I'm here today to voice South by Southwest's support for the design as it stands. The way I see it, this plan addresses two problems. As things are, there is an assumed dog run that bisects a transportation corridor. However, the Butler Hike and Bike Trail is part of Town Lake Metropolitan Park, not Auditorium Shores. It is clearly separate as well when considering operations, maintenance, curfew, and usage. No event producer assumes that the use of Auditorium Shores is a de facto use of the trail. Town Lake Metropolitan Park is not mentioned in Section 344 of City Code, which outlines off-leash areas in Austin. Neither is the Butler Hike and Bike Trail. As such, the trail itself is by default an on-leash area and should remain that way. Regarding the design, I appreciate the hard work put forth by the planners, architects, and the community as a whole. I have provided my time, interest, and input in this process for the last 5 years. This is input that has involved event planners, neighborhood associations, the community at large, organizations from the area such as the Long Center, the Opera, Doherty Arts Center. I've been in these meetings for 5 years. I've seen all members of the community involved in this discussion. I also want to thank the Parks Foundation for finding the funding for this public amenity. It's long overdue. This plan and design will help to ensure a sustainable future for Auditorium Shores. It takes into account aesthetic and environmental considerations. These plans should help to mitigate bacterial contamination and the ongoing erosion of Lady Bird Lake. It is a cohesive plan that enhances the existing space without compromising its integrity or its history. South by Southwest looks forward to the timely completion of a revitalized Auditorium Shores and the Trailhead project. At that, I urge Council to heed the recommendations of PARD and the Parks Commission and improve the design as it stands. I thank you for your time.
Brian Regan.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Brian Regan. I've been an Austin resident for, I guess, 8 years now, going on 9. This is now the second time in Austin that I have actually been a minority. The first time was as a cyclist. And I watched as cyclists and the general public of the greater demographic would fight, and I watched bicyclists jump off their bikes and beat cars with their bike locks, and I've seen cars drive and hit cyclists. And the city's result for that was to build bike lanes and safer ways of passage for the dogs, or for the bikes. And now we see the same conflict of interest, and rather than us working as a community, which is the main plan of the goal, it says in the plans over and over again, this is to unite and bring the community together. Albert Einstein said, you cannot both simultaneously prevent and prepare for war. And this isn't war, but this is going to create conflict. And rather than having our community come together and share this, we're now separating. There's a large population, for some reason the population of dog owners is seen as aggressive, pitbull owning only fighting dogs. I own 2 weenie dogs myself. Penny Lane and Braxton go and close. They make people's days every day. I'm also very involved as an advocate, as a small business owner with the dog community. There's over 650 dog-friendly listings in Austin, showing that this community and the businesses are making money off of that. My group alone raised over tens of thousands of dollars for local Austin businesses, from restaurants, bars, and those that accommodate to the dog owner and community. The other thing that we've said is that's a big issue we know is the waste and whatnot. Well, lots of people like myself have started up big things like campaigns like Art on Poop, where we're working with local Austin artists in making, it says, beautify Austin, make the ordinary not. And there are a lot of dog owners like myself and everyone else here that's really responsible, that doesn't want the face of dogs that has been presented to the general public out there. I'm okay with having my dog on leash, but when you create a ban from a city and want to create a community, that just cannot be possible at the same time. Something I put here with the Art on Poop is this is what we have for everything that goes out. I'm an Austin dog owner. I'm committed to keeping both our parkland and our cities clean and safe for all to enjoy. I appreciate your support in furthering efforts. By purchasing this bag, which is this to keep poop in so when you're out and about you don't have to set down your poop. By purchasing this bag, you have become something bigger than yourself. We as dog owners have a responsibility in and around the city. We are a community, and this bag is a fun way to start a movement. And my promise is you will never see a brand, a logo, or any other company other than local Austin art and ways to support our community on this product. So I just want to be very clear that there's a huge sect of dog owners that don't want this to happen, that do not want dog attacks happening. We're okay with our dogs on leashes, but when you ban a sect of people from a certain specific part of town, you're only going to cause more conflict between the two. Thank you.
Bill Fraser.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. My name is Bill Frazier. I am a longtime parks advocate, dog advocate, park adopter for Auditorium Shores, chaired the Off-Leash Area Advisory Committee for 3 years, and now co-founder of the Friends of Austin Dog Parks. This conversation for this location that we're moving the dogs to on the West End started in 2008. It started in a meeting between myself and PARD officials at that time. And it was to find a solution to fix the problem at the base of the event lawn, and that's what we're talking about. And since that time, through all of the community advocate meetings, through the Off-Leash Area Advisory Committee's time in play, we have supported this plan because we see the conflicts that exist at the base of the event lawn and the need to improve safety there. Also, what hasn't been mentioned as often here is improve the shoreline erosion in that area. So this is a smart plan to pick up the dogs that are at the base of the event lawn and move them to the West End. But we're looking at, we have two type user groups who use this park. We are dog owners in the city. We have those that trek and those that gather. And that component is represented at Auditorium Shores. When we look at the base of the event lawn in that tight circle, that tight group of people, that's the community that gathers. What the community is in an uproar over is we're taking away this ability to be able to trek the park in free movement. This is the group that has never conflicted with the stakeholder. So what we're asking in what we've been asking and what we've been asking the Parks Department to do is make some concessions in this. We're supporting the idea of moving the dogs to the West End, but we would like to leave a greater portion of the park leash free. We're not eliminating the trail conflict. In fact, we're creating 3 times the problem with the 3 openings that will be in and out of the new location on the West End. What we would like to do is we'd like to see the middle lawn, if there's going to be any compromise at all discussed amongst you, we'd like to see up to the Stevie Ray Vaughan sidewalk left leash free. We don't agree with no dogs allowed on the event lawn. That's kind of like your mother's couch that was covered in plastic in the living room that you were never able to sit on. We don't want our parks like that. We want to be able to experience it. Also, for some in the community, we've heard from handicapped owners and handlers, Auditorium Shores is the most user-friendly park for them to be able to access from the parking lot into the parkland. They are members of our community who use the park to trek. They don't participate in the gathering mode there at the base lawn. So if there's discussion, again, we'd like you to consider some loosening of the leash restrictions that you will consider here. And for that, that's all I have.
Elizabeth McGreevy. James Bixler here. James Bixler. Are you here? Are you James? You're James Bixler. So you have up to 6 minutes.
Oh, I can talk slow? Okay, well, I can talk slow.
Well, you have up to 6 minutes. You're not, it's not a minimum.
Okay. Okay, hi, hello, council members and mayor. I appreciate your job and the patience that you sit here every month to listen to everyone. My name is Elizabeth McGreevy. I have been an avid user of Austin Dog Park since moving here in 1995. I am also the mother of an 11-year-old son, and we live off of Brody Lane. I am for the need to increase balance, safety, and turf and shoreline restoration. However, I'm against the actual design that PARD has put forth. Since moving here, I've worked with landscape architects on projects such as the LCRA Redbud Center, the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, the Domain, and the upgrade of Fort Hood Military Housing Parks and Trails. And on the side, I've given lectures throughout the Hill Country on sustainable landscaping for programs such as the Austin Green Boots Educational Series. My first objection to the PARD presentation is that they're calling this design sustainable. There is nothing sustainable about 16 acres of turf. What's worse is confining the large number of dogs that frequent Auditorium Shores into a fenced-in area will drastically increase the maintenance requirements of that space. According to the turf manager at Zilker, who I talked to, dogs are usually not the problem. It's congestion and lack of maintenance. And in fact, he says after one night of people playing soccer, he can go out the next morning and see exactly where they played. So how many dogs are we talking about? Well, PARD actually doesn't know. Neither does the city censor data collector. So we decided to take our own counts. At peak use, there can be as many as 200 to 250 dogs. That is an extremely large number of dogs that PARD did not consider. As the ASPCA writes, and other dog trainers, and dog behavior specialists will confirm, dog parks should be big enough for dogs to space themselves out. Crowding can lead to tension and fights can break out. To justify the drastic reduction in size, PARD reports the trend for downtown dog parks is less than 1 acre. First, Auditorium Shores is not technically part of downtown, it's part of Central Austin. And since PARD mentioned Portland, Oregon, I looked at a survey of Central Portland dog parks. Of those, 5 were less than 1 acre, but 19 were greater than 1 acre. PARD also mentioned Boston, yet Boston City Council in February of this year voted a 5-acre off-leash, unfenced dog park in the middle of the Boston Common. And you don't get more downtown than that. In short, it doesn't appear PARD has done very thorough research. PARD stresses the need to increase safety. Of course, we all agree with that. However, the PARD design creates new safety issues as the dogs enter and exit the fenced-in areas. And yes, we know that they're not fences, that they're these large concrete barriers. They're going to have to be moved around every time there's an event. But there will be openings with zigzag fences, and in order to enter and exit with dogs coming and going on leashes, and you have people with more than one dog, that creates congestion. So we're going to have that at least 2 points along the actual running trail. And let's see, also, okay, let's see, where did I get? Okay, and I lost my spot. Okay, so, and the other congestion also occurs, where it is currently, we've already mentioned, is on the north side of the event lawn, but the design does not solve that problem. There's still going to be congestion because when you ban the dogs from the event lawn, you're still going to, people are still going to be congested as they go through that same trail. I believe a better solution would be to connect the 10-foot granite trail shown along Riverside to the running trail north of the parking lot. This would give runners and cyclists the option of running through or around an off-leash area. Also, to further spread out and decongest dogs and owners entering the park, to add a pathway through the middle of the event lawn to make the event lawn be on leash. In fact, this was even discussed as an option 2 nights ago. And to make the event lawn, then leave the remaining park as off-leash and unfenced. Such a design will support greater safety because it will, for the most part, get rid of all the bottlenecks and congestion points that have proved as a source of the conflict to date. So what do I want? I want more time for research. I would like to see an expert on dog park behavior brought into the process. Most of all, I would like to see the general public, not just a few stakeholders, brought into the decision-making process. As you can see from the 2,500 plus signatures that we have collected, your constituents are adamantly opposed to fencing in and banning dogs. We ask that you postpone your vote until January 30th, I believe it is. Thank you.
Brad Emmons.
Mayor, council people, thank you. I just recently moved earlier this year down to Central. I was raised in and around Austin, but I've just started living Central, and I love it. And I got a bike, and I started riding around, and I'm actually not a dog owner, but I'm opposed to the proposed plan as it stands. Whenever I ride through there, I've ridden through there dozens of times now, it's like a Norman Rockwell painting. There's not a lot of places. In fact, it may be the only one. People talk about safety on this matter.
Safety, I think, has really been propped up as a straw man issue. To me, it seems like a farce, kind of a red herring. And I think sans C3's involvement, I don't even think we'd be having the discussion involving safety. I've been through there dozens and dozens of times, and I don't really see the danger. And so I actually like it the way it is because the bike path is next to the off-leash area. Like whenever I go through there, I'm watching the dogs chasing their tennis balls and stuff, and I think that's really cool. And I was here the other night with the PARD meeting, and I saw a man use a story, an anecdote about his daughter being hit by a dog and got a goose egg on her head or whatever. I think he was related to the Parks Department or whatever. And I think his example was really disingenuous because it really had nothing to do with the trail at all. And I've heard arguments similar being used that seem really disingenuous. And it really reminds me, during lunch, during the executive session, I rode my bike back across the river, and I saw that they're already digging up the west side. And then there's a sign with the map with the plan. And it looks like it's already underway. It's already done. It reminded me I was in the Army. And I went to Germany, and then they sent me to Bosnia after Clinton sent the first wave in after 6 months. And we got there, and we were watching on the Armed Forces Network on the only television, Norman Schwarzkopf telling everybody in future tense what the units would be that would be replacing the first 6 months as Clinton expanded the role to 12 months and then eventually 18, and now it's a big base. And he was talking about all these units as if they were future tense, because the Congress hadn't actually approved what was the expansion of the mission beyond 6 months. And our units were already there, and he was naming 1st Division. He was naming our units, and we were already there, and nobody else in the States knew it. And we were all yelling at the TV, we're already here, we're already here. We thought it was funny at the time, but in hindsight, it was really disturbing. And when I was here the other night, and I saw them allow only 10 people speak for 3 minutes, and then promptly ignore all of those people, and then proceed with a vote to approve it, it made me really feel like I did back in Bosnia. Thank you.
Michelle Hazen. Will you give Michelle your name, and she can call your name out when she gets on the microphone, and we'll do that. The reason I want to do it that way is because you're not getting on the record when you just shout it out from the back.
Hi, my name is Michelle Hazen, and I'm also going to take some time
What's her name?
Cam Mager.
Cam Mager. All right, so you have 6 minutes. Are you on the list, Cam?
Yes, you called my name.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Hi. My name is Michelle, and I'm a downtown resident, a dog owner, a daily user of the park and the trail. I jog on the trail. I go there every day, and so does everybody in my family, and I meet up with all my friends, and it's definitely a big part of my life, and I know it's a big part of a lot of people's lives. I would like to ask the City Council to postpone voting on this agenda item so that the public gets more of a say in this process. We want PARD and city officials to spend more time engaging with the public and then incorporating that feedback into a design that offers balanced use for all park users. Alternate plans that the public has a say in and approves of without putting the needs and wants of C3, a private company, ahead of Austin residents and taxpayers. The fight over Auditorium Shores is not only about dogs. It's about the public process being bypassed and about a private company, C3, donating money and then dictating policy on how public land is used, all for their monetary benefit. Auditorium Shores is a public park first and foremost, not an event venue. Our public parks are intended to be used and enjoyed primarily by Austin residents, and that's what we do right now. People are acting like families aren't able to use Auditorium Shores right now, but that's not true. They're there every day, enjoying the park with their dogs and even without their dogs. And if anybody has a problem with them, which there's a lot of space, so everybody has room, they could go literally across the street right there. And there are parks where dogs are only allowed on leashes, and there are really very few places downtown living in one of the high rises that people can take their dogs and let them run off the leash. And being a city that prides itself on being a no-kill city and is targeting mainly the urban development to find homes for over 6,000 dogs a year just from Austin Pets Alive alone, you know, there's not going to be a lot of ways for people to adopt these larger dogs and take them somewhere for them to run when so many people are moving into the urban center of the city. A grassroots effort has brought together a diverse group of Austinites who are passionate about saving Auditorium Shores for many different reasons. But we all agree on one thing: the plan is not in the best interests of the people. As people have started to learn of the changes, they have overwhelmingly opposed the plan, and momentum is only growing. Austin voters are shocked to find out about this rushed agenda being pushed through without inadequate user data or public input. And this is a rushed timeline. TUR Partners is a nationally acclaimed advisory firm that is conducting a study of Town Lake Metropolitan Park and providing recommendations for enhanced public access and enjoyment of Austin's waterfront parks. Extensive research, analysis, and discussions with stakeholders is generating a long-term vision, and they're presenting this final report to the City Council April 2014. Why are policies being put in place and voted on before we receive the actual data from that report? Why is City Council voting on policy based not on user data, but on flimsy personal anecdotes from PARD staff? Again, this issue is about way more than simply moving and shrinking a dog park to a tiny corner, which I do not agree with, but it has larger implications. The entire situation is a case study in public-private partnerships gone wrong. The normal public process has been bypassed. Public land has essentially been privatized, and the Austin people have been sold out without getting a say or a vote in the matter. From the beginning, the Parks Department has vehemently denied that C3 had any stipulations for this private donation in both official public statements and interviews. After months of speculation, and even statements from C3 saying they had absolutely no say in the design process and no opinion on banning dogs from the event lawn, the following internal emails surfaced via the Freedom of Information Act and were published in the Austin American-Statesman this past Sunday, December 8th. Jesse Vargas, Parks and Recreation Department Assistant Director, wrote to colleagues on March 5th. He said, spoke to Charlie, that's Charlie Jones from C3. He's okay with 1-year shutdown of the shores for the renovations, but it took a little persuading. He's most concerned about dog traffic and asked that we moved on this soon, before Food and Wine Fest. PARD official Marty Stump went on to warn his colleagues in April 25th email, the greater off-leash community has not been fully apprised of this initiative. The development of an enhanced off-leash area has been part of the master planning process and discussed openly in the stakeholder and public forums related to this project. However, there has never been a formal proposal nor agreement to reduce the off-leash area at Auditorium Shores. To my knowledge, the former off-leash advisory committee was never asked to endorse a reduced area. We need to be prepared to answer questions from the City Council on this issue and plan for further public stakeholder outreach. Jesse Vargas then responded saying that doing a 30-day public comment period would show good faith and give us time to organize a meeting or two to firm up support or neutralize criticism. May 3rd, I watched the May 3rd original park board session on the government website, and Jesse Vargas said that they would continue to engage the public on this issue. However, the first public meeting wasn't until July 10th. So they're not continuing. They started it months later. Is that the first one? Or?
Ma'am, that's your time. That's 6 minutes.
Okay. Can I wrap up or?
No, ma'am.
No. Okay.
Next, before I go to the last speaker, Keith Linton. Keith Linton. You still, well, nobody asked for your time. Do you want to donate your time to, she can have your 3 minutes. So you got 3 minutes after all here.
Okay. So, also, a media relations staffer asked the city asked Vargas in early June, prior to a city council vote on the agenda plan, if the communications office of the city could mention the plan in a press release. Vargas was against it. He said, "We've done a pretty good job of controlling the message," he wrote. Highlighting the item ahead of city council vote was not part of the plan. So obviously, PART officials are doing backdoor deals with C3, promising to change public policy for the benefit of a private company and purposefully circumventing the public input process. Please do not let this happen. The losers here are the residents, taxpayers, and voters of Austin, because we don't have a say. The Parks and Rec Department and other city officials have been very careful in attempting to frame the issue as something else entirely, blaming safety, making it all about dog owners. The real losers in this deal are indeed the people of Austin. We should have a say in what happens in our public land, and we have had almost no input at all. Despite over 100 voices who came to the meeting opposing the design for Auditorium Shores, Austin Park and Rec Board voted to advance the design to City Council. 80 people signed up to speak in opposition of this. I myself signed up to speak, but was not allowed. The small room filled up quickly, and when denied access to speaking at the proceedings, a huge gathering of people poured into the lobby of City Hall to watch the proceedings on television. Only a limited few from the opposing side were allowed to speak and sit in the room. I was removed. I was standing, but people who were there from the organizations were allowed to stand. None of the people who spoke in favor were concerned citizens. They were all people representing organizations who are already involved with the deal or who had a vested interest in the deal with C3 going through. The public deserves input in this process, and yet PART has carefully managed the situation from start to finish, ensuring the public didn't ever have the chance to say no. They clearly think it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission from the people. That is not how public policy should be shaped. Please postpone this matter. As a resident and an Auditorium Shores personal stakeholder, a daily user, and an Austin voter, I implore you to not let this pass.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. I have a quick
Mayor Pro
question.
Tem, question for you, ma'am.
Michelle, I have a quick question for you. And I'll just state it while you're walking down. You said that you were removed from the proceedings. Can you explain that to me?
Yes. They said the room was full, but I was standing in there, and the people who were there in favor of it were allowed to stand, standing room. And they said that they came in and asked several people who were standing in there that were against it and who had signed up to speak but weren't going to be, but they removed us and told us that we had to leave the room.
So that they were people that were for it. I mean, it was a citizen. It wasn't anybody official in city capacity.
What's the question?
I guess I'm just trying to make sure that
Who told you?
Several people
Who told
were
you?
removed from the room. I don't know who the
It sounds
people.
like it's a fire marshal thing to me.
Oh, okay.
Well, the people who were standing there who were not signed up opposed to it were allowed to stand there, so it just didn't really make any sense.
Okay.
That was personally confusing for some of us, but
Okay.
we all stood out in the lobby, and was that the only question?
Yes, I just
Oh,
was
okay.
trying to understand that.
Thank you.
Catherine McLean.
Mayor, Council, thank you so much for giving me a few minutes to speak. I'm honored to have the opportunity. I've heard the silent majority of Austinites referred to, and I appreciate the opportunity to break that silence a little bit. I fully support this plan. To me, it is a safety and health issue. I'm a runner. I'm a parent of a small child, and I can tell you that when I go down to Auditorium Shores, I do worry. And I do think that after 40 years, it's time. I've heard objections about the lack of time that this plan has received public input, but it's also my understanding that for nearly 14 or 15 years, this plan has been on deck, and that the city has recognized that upgrades and basic improvements are absolutely vital for the safety and health of the human users of this beloved space as well as the canine users. So I want to give you my voice in support of this plan. I understand that if we don't move swiftly to begin implementation, that there could be a postponement, or in fact the actual build out could be in jeopardy entirely. I, as a citizen, as a voter, and someone who loves this town and this particular park space, would hate to see another 40 years go by before this great urban area gets the badly needed safety and health upgrades that Austinites expect. Thank you.
Yeah. That's all the speakers that I have signed up wishing to speak. Councilmember Martinez.
I wanted to ask staff some questions, but I'm going to make a motion to approve, but with some modifications. I presume there'll be some amendments. But I want to make sure the proposal that's before us, Sarah, did it incorporate some of the changes that have been suggested by the Parks Board and others, such as on the lawn, that the dogs would still be allowed as long as they're on leash? It's not, or is it still in the backup proposed as off leash? I mean, no dogs on the lawn.
Sarah Hensley, Director of Parks and Recreation. We have made some suggestions, some improvements to the actual recommended outline based on input we received from citizens, and they have some very valid points. So we took that into consideration. One of those was, okay, how do you expect us to traverse from the parking lot to an off-leash area if we don't cross this? And the point was, you're right. So we said, you're right. It makes sense that you would walk across that lawn that is called event lawn, but the lawn, to walk across that with the dog on leash. Then we heard that there was some issues related to people that may have special abilities, meaning it's hard to get across that area, another area, and then over to the off-leash area. So it's not been approved, of course, because we have to work with the transportation department and we have to make sure that it will work. But we believe that we can put in some parking there if it's approved. And of course, we will want to go back to the neighborhood as well, because it's putting some parking there along the Riverside area. But for people to be able to get out of their car and go directly to an off-leash area without having to go a long distance. We also heard, and very valid point, that if you put the off-leash area where the dogs can enter the water further down, closer to where the trash collects, now it's not the most desirable place to have your dog get into the water. Valid point. So the staff went back with the designer to look and architect to look at how you could have entry points not only for dogs to come off and jump into the water, but for dogs who have some special needs, hip dysplasia and others, so that they have a better way to get into the water. So we moved those. We also heard it wasn't big enough. We get it. We're going from, let's be realistic, 17.5, 18 acres down to what was 3.2 or so. And so staff went back to work to look at how could we improve it and increase it to give them more room. And that's when we went to the plan to try to increase that area and reroute the trail again, because we heard, and we did hear from other people, and we're still hearing from other people, that it is a safety issue and they don't want a conflict. So we went back and looked at that. And that's sort of right where we are when it comes to some of the concessions that we have made.
So is that this plan that's?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If it has the draw and the cutout
Can you give this to Gary and have him put it up there, because there are multiple versions going around. When I go to the website, there's a completely different image, and so the lady that spoke about the fence may very well have seen an image with fences on it, because there's 3 or 4 versions from our backup to what's online. So I want to just get crystal clear what's in this proposal.
Absolutely. And in regards to fence, I'm going to ask Jesse Vargas to come up here, but I asked the same question. We get it. Typically across larger cities across the country, yes, we did do our homework, and I'm glad to see Boston is putting a 5-acre off-leash area downtown, but traditionally across larger cities in an urban core, in the urban area, dog off-leash areas are primarily about 1 acre or less. They are fenced, and many of them are asking them to permit their dogs. In this case, We didn't want to put up the steel fences. We didn't want it to look unsightly. We heard loud and clear. We don't want this to be a prison for our animals. I agree. And so, working with the architects and the planners and others, they tried to come up with a creative way of putting natural barriers, shrubbery, or some kind of gated, small barrier with a rope kind of fencing, but not the steel hurricane fences that you see normally in a park. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I'm correct. So, and we were trying to hide that, or not really hide it, but maybe look a little more aesthetically pleasing by using some shrub and brush and some berm, so that we didn't fence our furry friends in to a point where it looked like they were in prison. And so, again, there is no gate, double gate. You got to go into one gate and another, which is the traditional off-leash area for a lot of cities, but we just didn't think that was very pretty.
Okay, so the image that is up is the current proposal.
That's the current plan.
And so the off-leash area is expanded
Yes, sir.
farther to the east, not all the way to Stevie Ray Vaughan, which was one of the
No.
requests for Mr. Frazier, but it is expanded. And there are, as you mentioned, no gates, and is there fencing?
Let me have him explain the type of, it's a cable, post and cable with some aesthetically pleasing stuff.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Pleasure to be here with you tonight. So if you direct your attention to the middle of them, Jesse Vargas, sorry, Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. If you direct your attention to roughly the middle of the screen there, where the trail splits and then rejoins itself, the lawn that's now created in the middle, that was added as a 1.5 acre meadowland as an additional augmentation to the off-leash area to increase the amount of space that the dog families would have to run and play. So you'll notice 2 dotted lines that run parallel to both sections of the trail. Sorry, freaked me out there for a second.
Jesse, would you mind grabbing a cordless mic and walking over and pointing as you talk? It's right here on the side of the podium.
Can I use that pointer maybe?
No.
Oh, here's the mic. Yeah.
Come on, you guys have done this before.
Okay, here we go. Yes, thank you. Okay, so the 2 dotted lines that are represented running parallel to both trail sections here represent a movable barrier, one and the same, by the way. So in other words, you would never see the movable barrier in both places at once. The intent here is that the majority of the year, the movable barrier would reside in this area. And when I say movable barrier, that's not yet been fully designed, so I certainly respect some of the landscape architects that have commented here today. I would respectfully submit to them that this is a very schematic drawing, so it's difficult to draw certain conclusions from what you're seeing here, and we expect as we seek your approval today, and if we're granted approval to move forward, you'll see more details as the next few weeks to come. So the movable barrier would reside here the majority of the day, but at the time of the year when programming needs would dictate, we would move that movable barrier back to this location, and thereby reducing the off-leash area to its originally intended 3.2 acre size. Now, it's important to note, though, that at this point in time, the only event that's programmed to happen in this area is Fun, Fun, Fun. It only happens once a year, and including load in and load out and the event days, you're looking at this movable barrier residing in this more reduced location for roughly 6 to 7 days a year. So the rest of the year, 358 days, the barrier would reside here, giving the off-leash community a full 4.7 acre area.
And in this proposal that's on our agenda is from that removable barrier east, going all the way east. Yes. So all of that is being proposed as leash only?
So the area, it's traditionally been known as the event lawn here, would be dog-free in order to encourage general public use, as you would see at other parks in town, picnics, pickup games, shore play, restoring some access points to the general public, people that would otherwise not desire to want to be around a pet. This area here in the middle, traditionally known as the middle lawn, would become an on-leash area. Currently, it's an off-leash. And then, as you mentioned, Councilmember Martinez, in this area here would be off-leash, 365 days a year.
You just conflicted what Sarah said. Sarah just walked up here and said that she heard concerns of folk getting out of their car at South First Street Bridge and understands that they need to walk across the lawn with the dog on a leash. You just said they're precluded.
Well, yeah, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify that. At PARD board, one of our board members, Hill Abel, had asked, would it be impossible to allow people to simply transit across the lawn? So we understand people, I'm sorry, let me move this over.
So what's listed as middle lawn and event lawn is allowed to have a dog as long as they're on a leash.
Middle lawn, on leash for sure, and in this area here, we would encourage people to transit across the lawn and necessarily not loiter there. That would be the difference. People park here. We understand they're going to want to kind of cross the lawn. We have no issue with that, absolutely none. Once they reach here, we encourage them to, as Mr. David King mentioned, stay a while. Let's move away from this transit mentality. Play here, recreate here, and then once you reach this area here, you can. Once you reach this area here, you can let your dog off the leash and enjoy this 4.7 acre area.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Sarah, did you have something you want to add?
No, not at this time. I'm sure I'm going to get more questions. So I'll just
Yeah. One of the things that we are also having to work around, well, let me just say, there are 25 events that happen a year on Auditorium Shores. There's no proposal to change that number, to add that number in any way, shape, or form.
No, sir. And as a matter of fact, staff would not recommend it.
No, nor would I support it. But so we are working on a very few events that have an annual occurrence in this temporary phase of construction that are going to be on some portion of the Auditorium Shores / Butler Park area.
Yes, sir. Right now, if you don't mind, I'll walk you through it if we'd like me to do that, so that everybody's on the same page. When 1999, yes, there's a master plan for this area, and it kind of died and went dormant because we didn't have funding. Renewed and reinvigorated back in 2009. When we began in 2009, we began to notify event venue organizers that we formally notified them that we were going to have to make some changes to Auditorium Shores. We were going to have to fix it because we had some serious issues. Erosion, a worn-out grassy area that was turning into a dust bowl, and the event organizers as a whole were saying, you got to do something about this, and users were saying, you got to do something about this. It was turning into being a dust bowl. And so we began to notify the different event venues formally that we were going to be working on a plan. One was first the trailhead, which one person mentioned earlier. Looks like we've already started doing something without having approval. We had approval. That's the trailhead work that we received the matching grant for. So that's separate, but it's something very important because it also helps with some of the issues related to users. Then we decided after that we started notifying all the groups every year formally in their contracts. So in 2010, when we began to organize all these groups to use the area for their events, we notified them again. Don't forget, we're going to be having to shut this down in the next few years. Not sure when, but we're going to be doing that so that we can make improvements. In May of this year, our sales and event manager met with the groups as a whole, sat down, walked with them then through Auditorium Shores, talked about the changes. The architect was there. Some of the staff was there to say, here's what we're proposing, here's what we would like to do, and would you give us feedback, and which they did. We also began the one-on-one meetings with the groups. So instead of just doing it as a big group, we also started sitting down with these groups and the leaderships and saying, there's this two-step process that we need to go through for you to be able to find an alternative location because of your event being misplaced or moved over because of the work that we need to do. One of those is a citywide stakeholder group, which is made up of the fire department, the transportation department, police, event management, and that is a group that looks at it from an internal point of view so that we can make sure all the bells and whistles are taken care of before we go to the neighborhood. The most important part there is to go out and let that venue group go and speak about their plan and what they'd like to do and then get the support of the neighborhood. 16 events have been the ones that are going to be displaced, and out of those, 14 have completed their process, which means they've gone through step 1 and step 2. 2 of those, Urban Fest and Fun, are still working on it, and we believe as we're moving forward, we're trying very hard to make that happen. 5 total events are requesting, and this is the process that they go through, are requesting to be able to use a different venue, including Butler, and one possibly a very small area of Auditorium Shores that may be open. And that's the process that we're working on now.
So the 2 events that you haven't solidified an agreement with are Urban Fest and Fun Fun Fest. But South by Southwest, Food and Wine, and Reggae Fest.
Reggae have gone through their initial with the city and have made contact with the neighborhood and are having discussions, but we still have, I would say this, we don't have the sheet that says it's all been finalized. So there's that process we go through. We are very encouraged, quite frankly, with Urban Fest and Fun Fest in that we need to make sure they get the fully loaded CAD drawings, that we get the fencing plan, where they want to put vendors, their transportation, their load in and load out. But we have to go through those 2 steps, and that we still have those 2 steps to go with those 2 groups.
Okay. So when do we anticipate having a decision with those remaining 2, or with all of them? It sounds like nothing is final.
Well, I think for the last 2, we need to get the final drawings and get that solidified as to here's exactly what we're proposing and how we're proposing it. And then once that happens, we will immediately expedite as city staff, because we understand we're on a time crunch, to pull together the city stakeholders, which is all the city departments. And then immediately after we are able to check that one off, then we go directly to working to set up the meeting with the neighborhood.
I want to say thank you to you and your staff. Spent so much time with us this week leading up to the meeting to try to solidify some of these issues that are out there, specifically to Fun Fest, which is an annual event that is requesting the use of those areas. So the map that was proposed yesterday that we all went through, is that something that PART is willing to live with, to allow Fun Fest to continue on the dates that we talked about, October 23rd or 4th?
I think from our perspective, those dates are fine, work for us because of where we are. I think our biggest, what we want to do is make sure that we have that next step, which is the city internal team, get the CAD drawings, get those done, and set up that meeting with the city internal team so we can get all those things signed off or worked out or negotiated. And then the next step is to work with that group to get in front of the neighborhood.
And one of the issues that both events are facing is, they can't even book acts or promote their events until they have an understanding of what they can and cannot do. So, I can't stress the urgency of at least figuring this out as quickly as we can, so that we can move forward. We're going from 25 events to 5 events.
Down to 5 events, that's right.
So I think the impact, at least over the construction period, is going to be extremely minimal to the neighbors. On those event days, there may be some issues, but we're doing everything we can to work through. So I want to move approval of your recommendation with the amendments to include the ability to traverse the lawn and to be in the area called the middle lawn with animals on leashes, and then incorporate the additional leash-free space that you all have recommended. And with the additional direction, I don't know how much time you need, but I want to give direction that you solidify these last 2 events so that they can proceed with what they need to have a successful event. And time is of the essence, and I know you know that.
We do, and you have my assurance, and I've talked to staff that as soon as we get that fully loaded CAD drawing, we will set up a meeting immediately internally with city staff to move that one and to get what needs to be done in the discussion there so that we can set that up to have the meeting with the city, with the neighborhood.
And I want to say that in some respects, C3 has been pointed to as the organization that's buying the city, and I just couldn't disagree with that notion more. They only have one event. It's Wine and Food Fest. This is a reimbursement of a city project that staff is bringing to us that we all need, that we as a community have agreed we need to improve Auditorium Shores. So I understand that folks have different feelings about different organizations, but I feel compelled to say that this is not a C3 issue. This is a Parks and City issue.
May I say one thing about
Sure.
that, please? I have to say that as well. C3 has offered to assist with these improvements in a good faith effort. When I came to Austin, they had offered the same for the Great Lawn at Zilker. To me, they made no conditions whatsoever. No conditions as a gift. It was a gift, and we could do this. And we own this plan. As the City of Austin, we own the design. No one else owns it. We own it. And that, therefore, we can make the necessary changes and needed that are, and don't have to worry about someone saying, I gave you money to do something. But finally, it's important to know that they've been a really wonderful partner working with us in the city, and they care about parks. They genuinely are good stewards of our parkland. And they have always stressed how important it is for them to be able to use the parks, but they want to make sure that they show how much they appreciate that use. And that's why, and the only reason why they wanted to help us improve that area.
So, Mayor, I'm moving approval with those minor amendments. I'm going to add this to the backup, Mayor, as direction for staff to work with Fun Fest to work towards approval of this plan, with the caveat that we are in conversations with Palmer Event Center that may be available that weekend. If so, Fun Fest has agreed to move a large portion of their event into Palmer Event Center, further mitigating the impact on the neighborhood to the south. So that is still in flux. That is not a final decision, but they are very open to that and willing to move indoors to mitigate even more. So I'll make that motion, Mayor, with this added.
Motion by Councilmember Martinez to approve with the amendments that dogs on leashes be allowed to traverse the event lawn on their way to the on-leash area or the off-leash area, and that the middle area depicted there, which I don't know what the acreage of that is.
5 to 6, Mr. Mayor, pending final design.
5 to 6. Okay, so that makes a total. Well, I'll talk about that later. I just want to recap the motion first. And anyway, be allowed to traverse the event lawn on the way to the dog areas, and with additional direction to expedite and accommodate Fun Fest and other events.
And Urban Music Fest.
And Urban Music
And that
Fest.
one is even happening quicker than Fun. That happens in the spring, so we really need to.
Yeah, and to emphasize that point that you made, that the reason for expediting is they have to book these events many weeks ahead of time. And, you know, I want to also encourage you to make sure they're accommodated. Is there a second? Is there a second to the Councilmember Spellman seconds? So I want to say just a couple of things. First of all, it looks to me like in total, this design accommodates dogs between roughly 10 and 11 acres of this entire park, with as much as 4.7 acres being off-lease area. Those are the figures that I have, 3.2 permanent and 1.5 variable. And just to talk about the philosophy of it a second, I've been saying for over a year now, having gone through budget cycle after budget cycle where we don't have enough money for our parks, finally realizing that we cannot pay for a decent park system alone by ourselves, that we have to seek out public-private partnerships to do a good job of it, like cities all over this country are doing. If we want to have a first-class park system, that's what we're going to have, and that's what we have. Some of those going on right now. There's a conservancy on Waller Creek that's going to be funding those parks along in a partnership with the city. Pease Park, I understand now, has formed a conservancy. There may be others, and this is kind of similar to that. We're engaging with the private sector to help us out to help us fulfill our community values, and I think that's important. This park it's not something that the Parks Department, no offense to the Parks Department, it's not something that they got down and said, drew a few lines on a piece of paper. We brought in a first-class firm from Chicago, Mayor Daley's old firm.
Yes.
And they came down, I don't know, it was at least 6 months ago, maybe longer, came down to Austin, brought for conferring on the design of this. Mayor Daley brought in Manny Diaz, former mayor of Miami, both of whom have vast experience in designing urban parks. And they also engaged former Mayor Will Wynn. He was a part of that team too, that worked on this. There was a lot of expertise that went into it. And I'm very confident that we're going to have, at the end of the day, we're going to have a great downtown park. This is the jewel of the city of Austin's park system. Councilmember Riley.
And just a question that could be either for you or Councilmember Martinez. When we discussed this at the work session on Tuesday, I thought I heard from you that you expected that we would postpone this so that we could get some clarification on a number of questions. I fully agree with the concept of getting help from private sector partners to bring our parks up to the standard that we expect them to be. And I'm very hopeful that we could achieve something great here. I just want to make sure that we're proceeding carefully, especially with an asset as important as Auditorium Shores. And so I just wanted to ask, what has changed since Tuesday with respect to the need for a postponement?
I'm happy to answer, Mayor.
Go ahead.
It wasn't just since Tuesday, but what we looked into further was the timeline on the construction and the growing phase, as well as accommodating the 5 events that we're referring to on a temporary basis. So delays into January, when work is supposed to start this month, it triggers a domino effect for all of those events where we have specifically timed them within the construction phase, and quite frankly could jeopardize the entire project altogether. If we can't, it's trying to balance just so many competing interests, including those 5 events, that it's really important that we stay on a time frame that we've been able to build and accommodate everyone. And that's really what it is, nothing less.
Councilor Tello.
I have hopefully a friendly amendment to make, and that is that on the plan that we're adopting, we rename the event lawn. I wish I had a really catchy name to suggest, but I'm going to suggest, in the absence of a catchy name, to rename it the East Lawn. And here's why. We've heard from many constituents, may seem like a small thing, but we have heard from lots of constituents who are very concerned that we continue to regard our public parks, especially this public park, as a park and not as an events venue. And several of them have spoken. Thanks. Have spoken to some of the language in the contract with C3 Presents and particularly the phrase describing it as a major outdoor venue. And I think it is extremely important that we continue to regard our parkland for its primary purpose, which is to serve the residents of Austin who want to go there, whether it's to walk with their dog or to have a picnic with their family or to fly a kite. And I believe that small language change will make it clear that that's our priority.
Well, I certainly agree with everything you said, but I don't think we're properly posted for a formal naming event. If we want to relabel it on your working charts as the East Lawn, I think that'd be great.
Sure,
we can do that, absolutely.
Edit my language to be relabeling of the plan.
Because we may want to come along later and name it something else.
No, we can
and
do
that'd
that.
be fine.
Absolutely.
As long as if it says events lawn, I'll probably vote against it, but relabeling it.
And I probably will too.
All right, great. But I just want to say I do support this motion. I think, and I want to also say, thanks to everyone who's provided input. We have certainly heard from many dog owners who use the park regularly, and I understand the concerns you've raised about having the space limited. But I think at the end of the day, this really does provide a balance. It allows for significant areas for off-leash, significant areas for on-leash, and it also will provide more of an opportunity for people who don't want to be in an off-leash area. And though we haven't heard from hundreds of them, we have heard from some. And I think that the plan we have before us really does balance the different uses and will encourage a broader variety of activities in that space. And that's our job at the end of the day is to look at our public assets and see how well we can serve all members of the community. And I also just want to thank Director Hensley for saying that she would not recommend an adjustment of the 25 event day. And I want to clarify that's not events, that's event days. So for events that are on multiple days, that we don't, anyway, you get what I'm saying. Some events take place over 3 days, and that's how that's allocated. And I also appreciate my colleague who said he wouldn't support an adjustment either. I think that's very important, especially to the neighborhoods that are immediately adjacent to this park and feel the impact. I had an opportunity to attend the Bouldin Creek Neighborhood Association meeting earlier this week, and again, that was voiced as a concern, especially those who are immediately adjacent to places like Auditorium Shores, Butler Park, Silker Park. We are all hearing, I know, that they are really feeling the impact of larger festivals, an increasing number of festivals, and we need to make sure that their quality of life is protected as well. So thank you for your commitment to keeping that restriction where it is.
And one more question for Sarah. I think we've emphasized pretty strongly that these events that are scheduled there are going to be accommodated in the work schedule. I was wondering, you got this movable barrier type fence?
Yes, sir.
Between the, it can either be between the 3.2 acre and the 1.5 acre, or between the 4.7 and the 5 to 6 areas. If it's moved over to the 3.2, then could that entire area, if it had to be, could that entire area, the 1.5 acres plus the off-leash area, current off-leash area, be used to accommodate an event that had to have that space to function?
Yes, the answer is yes, it can be. That's what that was purposely done to accommodate if we had that. And it would be, obviously, we'd notify all the users that this is what we were going to do and why. And that was the whole reason, so that we didn't have to create a whole nother situation where we were limiting events down the road.
So you've kept those options open.
Yes, sir.
And apparently there's no question in your mind that you'll be able to accommodate that event.
No, and we're talking as we make the renovations, there's no question whatsoever that we'll be able to accommodate those that we have currently.
But Mayor, just to emphasize even further, we're not talking about new events. We're talking about the same
That's right.
25
Same ones.
existing events.
Same ones.
Any more comments? Councilmember Riley.
We have heard from an awful lot of Austinites who are concerned that we are becoming less dog-friendly by reducing this area, this off-leash area. There have been some issues with other off-leash areas as well in recent years. Do you see any room for a continuing conversation or for further progress on that issue about providing adequate off-leash space? I do, actually. Two things I want to say.
Contrary to public opinion, we all love furry friends too. Many of us own animals and have for a long time. So that's important to know. We're not dog haters. Second of all, you don't have to go but about a mile down the road, less than a mile, to one of the largest off-leash areas in the country, and that's the Zilker Great Lawn. Third thing, we are actively working right now to buy another piece of property. I can't go into detail, but another off-leash area. And we are actively looking across the city to provide more off-leash areas. To be real frank with you, we've had a little trouble. And I know Councilmember Morrison knows this because we had 2 sites identified and the public in the area came unglued. So,
I knew that too.
You know. So we are working diligently. Right now we're in conversation with the neighborhood. It looks really good. But we're not going to give up, and we're not going to give up on trying to provide spaces for all of our citizens, including our furry friends. It's a matter of balance for us, and what we're doing today and what we're proposing is a matter of balance and a matter of all of our users who matter to us. We're not going to give up. We're going to continue to look for places, and we're not going to need help. We need help from the public to help us identify areas that they might see that we may not see. But to answer your question, we're absolutely committed to trying to find more spaces and places and working with other city departments, as a matter of fact, to look at other lands that may not be used.
What is the status of the Off-Leash Advisory Committee?
That group sunsetted to do their work. Frazier, I have to say, Bill Frazier, and a thank you to him. I know we're at opposite ends on this, but I have to say he's just barely.
Just by a couple of acres.
And we want to continue to look at this. Our Parks and Recreation Board, by the way, feels the same way. They want to continue to look at this, but they had to make a decision and a recommendation to you that they felt was the right way to do it. We're going to continue to work with them, and we're going to continue to create, hopefully, stakeholder groups that will help us identify more areas and more spaces and help to make sure we have responsible pet ownership. We also are working with our Animal Services Director, Abigail Smith, and others to help us to look at all those kinds of things too, so that we are not necessarily, we want to be Austin, so we want to be a little different, but we also don't want to create a situation where we set ourselves up for failure and problems. And that's why we're going to constantly look at this and continue to do the right thing.
We had heard some concerns today about downtown residents and others in the central city who would like to encourage to adopt big dogs. They may not have room at their homes to provide off-leash areas. Do you see opportunities right here in the central city beyond those that exist today?
Honestly, we're struggling. I'm just going to be real frank. We're struggling. So if there's anybody out there that's watching this and they're a developer and they have some property they want to work with us on, we need the help because, as you know, the downtown property is very expensive. And when we get property for parks, we usually get it through a donation, an easement, or a parkland dedication where we get the money in lieu of. And so we are struggling, and we need some help. But we have to look no further than recently where we bought a parcel off of Riverside that was very small for over $1 million, $1.5 million. So you can see that it's very costly. But we're not going to give up, and we just need help in identifying some property. But it doesn't have to be, 10 acres, 20 acres. We can create a really nice off-leash area. It won't be something that they're going to be able to run with, and that's why we get it, that they need lots of spaces, different types of spaces, as Frazier alluded to. But our struggle right now in the downtown core is the expensive property and lack of property.
Our biggest downtown park north of the river is Waterloo Park, which is currently under renovation. Has there been any consideration of Waterloo Park as a possible site for an off-leash area?
We have not had that discussion, and that would be something we would, once it's completed with the tunnel project, we would have discussion with the Conservancy. But, we're always looking at all the other existing areas, too, that we have and trying to identify spaces and areas that we can have an off-leash area. We want to make good decisions. That's the thing, is we don't want to rush it, and we want to make good decisions about it.
Okay. Well, thanks for all your work on that. And
No, thank you.
I hope that will be a continuing conversation.
Thank you.
Councilmember Morrison.
Thank you. I appreciate those questions. And Director Hensley and I have had several questions,
Yes.
have several discussions about off-leash areas because there have been some that have gone off the rails. But the most fruitful, productive follow-on from that was when the neighbors that got together, that opposed it,
Yes.
got together and said, but we're for an off-leash area in this area.
That's right.
Let's talk about how we can do it, which to me really is a beautiful model. If we could figure out, what areas are lacking in off-leash dog parks, ask a group to come together and come up with a couple of options. So hopefully that might be something to move forward on in the future.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we did. After they said they weren't opposed to having one close to them, that's exactly where we went. We started looking, and it was due to the great work of our neighbors who identified some property, and that's what we're working on now.
And in fact, it was going to be about the same cost. Either you buy the new property and develop
Exactly.
it, or you were cost to convert.
Exactly.
But I think it's an interesting question, and that's why I asked for, you'll be able to see online in the questions and answers, or maybe you can even put it up right here. I asked for a map, and it's a little difficult to see the way it is, but of all of the off-leash dog parks. And I asked, and I think we need to be thinking about this more and more, I asked for an overlay of our new council districts now that they've been established. And it's real interesting. Guess what? There are some of the districts have zero.
Yep, we have a lot of work to do.
Dog parks, and so we need to be thinking in those terms. And while the interesting thing about putting it with overlaying the districts, if we have a sense that that's equal populations.
Yes.
So if you want to serve 80,000 people in 10 pieces, you can try and go through and make sure that there's access to a off-leash dog park for each one of those. So I think that this will offer us some guidance too.
Absolutely.
In moving forward, and I do appreciate everybody's work on this, and look forward to the outcomes.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Spellman. We're working our way. The Mayor Pro Tem is next, and then Councilmember Martinez, and then Councilmember Riley, and then live music and proclamations, it looks like.
Mine will be quick, Mayor. I offered a second to this motion in part because I was anticipating your answer to this question, Sarah, but I need to ask it now. You've got two events that have yet to finalize deals on this park area. It's the Urban Music Fest and the Fun Fest. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If we vote yes on the item before us today, do you anticipate that this is going to cause any trouble for either Urban Music Fest or the Fun Fest?
From the plan that we're proposing, the only way it won't, and that's why we proposed it this way, is that as you see, and the mayor alluded to it, where you have that area that's able to be pushed back a little bit to make it enlarged for those events, because only a couple of them actually use that area.
Right.
Otherwise, no, there should not be a problem.
Okay. I could bring, I think there's somebody from the Fun Fest up here. Actually, since he's here, and I know him, I'll ask him, if you wouldn't mind.
I know him too.
I know you do.
We
all do.
He's well known.
Bobby, do you anticipate, if we say yes to this resolution, do you anticipate any problem for Fun?
Likely.
Really? Why?
We were supposed to start planning and selling about a month ago.
Yeah.
If there's not a resolution for us fast, I don't know what that does to our timeline. I don't know what that does to our budget. The way that big international festivals book their acts, it usually happens more than a year out.
Right.
We're losing a couple of moments from our historical selling cycle.
Right.
One of them is right now that we're not going to be able to do. Predictability for us is the most important thing, and if we can solidify that, then we're great. But right now we have a conceptual plan that still has to go through what staff told us was a 6-week process, and that puts us completely far back in terms of how we can plan for our festival.
Okay, well, let me rephrase my question. It looks to me, I can count, that we're about to say yes to this proposal, and you're saying that is going to cause you problems? It sounds to me like once we solidify where we are, that's going to make it easier.
So I guess I should say from the outset that we're one of the biggest parks users at Auditorium Shores, and we'd love to see the park be better. We also would love to stay in the park and to keep contributing to that. Finding a solution that's an interim solution for 2014 is important to us to be able to stay there. Also finding a permanent solution for us, looking at the map that was proposed before, while the bigger dog park gives us a little bit of area if they move the fence line, we still use that entire area for our fest year-round, every year that we've had it there.
You're going to have to move some stuff around to make sure that 3.2 acres stays off-leash.
Right.
Okay.
So we're losing, somewhere 20, 25% of what we would normally have anyway, so that's a consideration for us. The thing that scares us is moving forward with the design plan and not having something for stakeholders that are affected by that solidified.
Right.
So I don't know what that timeline looks like, and I appreciate everything that Councilmember Martinez has done. I know that other folks have worked on this, and I really appreciate Sarah Hensley working on it too in the last 24 to 48 hours to find a solution. And I think that we're close.
We are.
I think the thing that concerns me is that we don't have anything solid yet. So that doesn't, when I go talk to, the people that I work with that do book the bands and that do create the CAD maps and stuff, we didn't know that we needed a final CAD map until about 24 hours ago. So had we known that in September, we would have had all of this stuff done beforehand. But now that we're here and we know that it's going to take much longer, it makes it a lot harder for us to plan our festival this year and for the years out.
Sarah, you're going to make this fine young, if-hirsute man wait 6 weeks before he gets a deal?
I'm sure Bobby will never leave my office. What I thought you were alluding to was the future sort of, working with the groups that, and I feel like because we have that kind of movable cable area and some flexibility, once that whole lawn work is done, we'll be able to accommodate them better than what he's talking about right now, which is a big unknown. I will admit it's up in the air. I think I mean, I think we're close, and I think we can get there. We have to expedite our end, and that's what we need to do, and you've got our commitment to do it. We just need a final map one way or another that says, here's what we're doing, here's how we want to place it, and the Palmer whole thing is a big deal. We've got to get it resolved. We can make the meeting happen really quick when it comes to the city internal stakeholders, and then we can turn around and request a meeting with the neighborhood fairly quickly as well. We just need to get moving and get going and have a final drawing from them as to this is what our final proposal is, this is how we want to manage it, and then we sit down as a staff, not just us, but transportation, fire, and everybody. And once that's done and everyone signs off on that, the next step is the neighborhood, and then we're done.
Okay, so that doesn't sound like it needs to take 6 weeks.
It better not take 6 weeks. I think we all know we've got to get it done. That's the end of the story. And we're committed. Bobby knows that. We are very committed to working with him, and we made the commitment. The minute we get their final map, we will set the meeting with the city staff.
I'll send it to you tonight.
Okay, there you go. Okay,
Music to my ears. Thank you very much.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Sarah, I just want to ask that same line of questioning in connection with Urban Fest. That usually happens with Texas Relays, which is in April, which is really on the shortest timeline of events that do not have a place. What are your plans there?
Jason, I am going to have to allude to you because I'm not as well versed. I do know that Urban Fest has preliminarily turned in their information, and it has been preliminarily been approved. They are scaling back a bit, and Jason can tell you exactly what's going on.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm Jason Maurer, Austin Parks and Recreation. Austin Urban Music Festival actually started earlier when we made the announcement in May and brought all the organizers in. Mr. Hill came in with us and scheduled a time on site. We've walked it. We are comfortable with his proposal right now. We're just waiting on his map to come in and take him to the stakeholder meeting. So he's already been doing a lot of preliminary work with us on site and with the Palmer Event Center. So I'm in a comfortable position with where he is because he started early in May already.
So you're just waiting for his map and you'll be able to seal the deal?
That is correct.
Okay. Sarah, I just wanted to follow up with a couple of questions about the dog situation, because we know this is a metropolitan park and it's there for many, many users, and we've heard a lot of testimony from the dog community, and you've said that you're going to work into the future with them. And I really appreciate the work that Councilmember Morrison did in actually looking at our other off-leash parks and how they aren't in certain districts. But are you familiar with any type of resolutions that result in ordinances where residential buildings actually reserve locations or spots for a dog park, a small dog park, or especially for dog use?
I'm actually very familiar with some cities have had some very big success with developers who were very forward-thinking, who incorporated as a part of their design off-leash areas for their tenants. And so how that came about, I'm not familiar, whether it was through a council action. I do know that the Parks and Recreation Board, Jane Rivera, proposed that the council look at this as part of our land development code, and that in the urban core, any new development would look at adding some form of a dog run or dog off-leash area for the tenants of their facility. Not that that's going to suffice for all the animals, because I agree, the dogs need larger spaces to run and play, and they need to have the interaction with their owners, but this would be for the emergency cases and other things. And it has worked quite well in other cities. That's my knowledge.
Okay. And I agree with you in the testimony today, which has more to do with larger areas,
Yes.
but it made me think about the fact that we don't have enough space for even the smaller areas and people that live in residential buildings.
We have to do honestly, the truth of the matter is this is an area for us that we've struggled with before I even came to Austin, and it's going to be an area we're going to struggle with for years to come. We're going to need help, and we're going to need help just like the mayor mentioned with public-private partnerships. We're going to need the help from the entities, the business entities, to help us identify areas, if we cannot purchase them, to help us identify areas that would serve as an off-leash area, or even our other city departments who are willing to allow us to do that.
Okay. And I fully agree with some of the mayor's comments that we simply cannot have a world-class park system without having private donations and participation. But that doesn't mean that the private donors dictate what the public is going to be expected to experience. And we just have to have safeguards in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. I think that the Waller Creek Conservancy has proven to be a good example, and I think this will also be a good example of how that we can continue to move our city forward with private donations as well as matching and leveraging those with public dollars.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
So I will be supporting the item, Mayor.
Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. I forgot one issue that we have been talking about this week that I would really like for us to consider. We have a request from some folks, and I know this is going to set Councilmember Riley off, but I have to bring it forward, about some additional potential parking, not just standard parking, but handicap accessible parking that is lacking in that area.
Yes.
As you mentioned in the presentation, this is an area where folks with accessibility issues feel more comfortable entering that area because of the parking lot at South First Street. But now that we're moving the off-leash area to the western edge of Auditorium Shores, can we look at a minimum some accessible parking, but even if there's other opportunity for standard parking as well?
Yes, we can, and actually we're very committed to doing that. It makes perfect sense
Great.
for people that have special needs and special abilities, as well as their dogs who have special needs and special abilities.
And maybe even some bike racks too.
We'll put some, oh, absolutely. Because people use the dogs with their, yeah.
I think we just lost the mayor.
No, I was just going to say, I seem to recall that, well, I remember back when we converted Riverside Drive there west of the circle, the rotary, there from 4 lanes to 2, that we never dug up that asphalt. We just covered it up with sod, so might be able to uncover it and
Yes.
find some asphalt there for parking spaces.
Preliminarily, the Transportation Department has said they would be happy to work with us on this to make that a reality.
Okay, so you're already onto that.
We have to find the funds, but they're willing to work with us. Rob, I don't want to get Rob in
Seems
trouble.
easy. You could just go out there.
Yeah.
All right. Councilmember Riley.
Sarah, is this in the primary setback of the waterfront overlay?
I'm sorry?
The area where you would put the parking, is that, that is within the waterfront
Sidewalk area
overlay?
there, and we'd have to do a setback off of the, you know how there's grass, sidewalk, and then the road, like the mayor talked about his, you know how we put in a parallel parking up at the farther end, up closer to where the current parking was? There's some parallel parking there, right there. And then if you go down further, there's no parking. There's a crosswalk, and then there's parking across the street for the Butler. It's directly across from that area, and we're looking at trying to maybe add in a few spaces for people that have different abilities.
Are there any issues with putting new surface parking in place in terms of remaining compliant with the waterfront overlay?
Well, Marty, come on up. I think we have a couple of issues, but I think...
Marty Stump, City of Austin Parks and Recreation Department. Yes, the answer is yes, Councilmember Riley. The Riverside Drive does fall within the primary setback of the waterfront overlay. I believe the primary setback goes all the way to Barton Springs Road. So we would have to go through the necessary approval process to add on-street parking there, handicap accessible parking. I believe we do need to follow the proper approval process for
But that would require a variance from the waterfront overlay.
That's what I understand.
And there is a process that we would have to go through to do that. And so that would not be something that you could do administratively?
I can't do it administratively, but again, we do have the support of the Transportation Department to help us so that it doesn't sit there in an ongoing process without getting some kind of answers.
And there will need to be some public engagement.
Absolutely.
In order
As I
to
mentioned
get
earlier, we have to have the public part of it as well.
In order to get a variance from the
That's
waterfront
right.
overlay, there would
Absolutely.
be public hearings.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because there are some people that would not want us to do it, but we believe that this makes some reasonable accommodation.
Okay, thanks.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Passes on a vote of 7-0. So we can go back now to item 84.